Greetings, Earth scientist, and you may be thinking, I wonder how the environmental R's apply to Earth science. Well, we're going to learn about actually 6 of them, but the 3 primaries are reduce, reuse, and recycle. And I'm going to kind of walk you through how there's a linkage of Earth science in every field that we've looked at, from astronomy to meteorology, oceanography, and geology this semester, and encourage you to see how versatile Earth science really is. When you look at a city like this and you see Houston, Texas, this is downtown Houston, by the way, and you're looking at the top area. My sister works in one of these buildings right in here. And then I want you to look at it on an air quality day that would be called an ozone day. This deals with climate. You're very familiar with that from this course. And if you haven't taken environmental science, that might be an option for you to learn more about this. I know that Brad Turner and myself both have a very extensive climate section to try to get you to understand that. But you've had that in this course too, so you're familiar with what makes climate drivers, feedbacks, and so forth. Point is that we need to preserve our environment. So let's take a look at some ecological impacts. When you see this image of a beach that's very polluted with trash, and then you see a dead organism on the beach, it's sad. But this is the realities of what we do on a day-to-day basis, which we don't even think about sometimes in our consumption of materials and how that converts into waste, and then what that means to our ecological footprint down the line. When you look at something like this, it's almost overwhelming. This is in the Pacific Garbage Patch, and I'll show you several images of it. And it's in one of those gyres that we learned about. And you look at this and it's saddening, but that's why there's fishing laws, that's why there's net size requirements, that's why there's disposal requirements for waste, because we want this sort of thing not to happen. When you look at organisms and you see what comes out of them, and you take a look at the destruction of what these animals are facing, then you realize that what we do matters. When you look at this endangered bird and you see what's in their stomachs, it's sickening, it's sad, it makes you just want to cry, because you look at it and you think, is this really possible? Is this happening? I guess animals really do ingest this type of thing. If any of the things in that stomach look familiar to you, then take note of how you might be able to reduce, reuse, recycle, and then we'll learn about the other 3 R's here shortly. Here's another image of this particular endangered bird. When you start looking in the carcass, you begin to see there's lots of plastic, and that's important because they're eating that thinking it's a food resource. It's just so disheartening. So now that you've seen some of these images, how do waste impact our wildlife? And you're looking at them, seeing some wrapped around the turtle's body, the seals, Hawaiian monk seals can't even open their mouth, plastic caught on sea otters and over this stork's head. You begin to realize that plastic seems to be a commonality, right? Well, it is everywhere we look. And where does our waste come from? Well, it comes from a variety of sources, and I could spend all day talking about this issue. Waste is regulated, first of all, by the Environmental Protection Agency, and subsequently at the Texas level, at Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. And we regulate both municipal waste, industrial waste, and then there's actually a third category called hazardous waste. So you're looking at municipal sources where we get trash and windblown trash, and then stuff that washes down the storm drains like you've seen a lot of if you've been around Texas when it's been raining. And all sources of runoff from non-point source pollution and point sources can contribute and lead to waste-related problems. One of the biggest problems that we find is the plastic bag. I am so guilty of going to the grocery store without my recycled bags. But if I could ask you to make a personal challenge, maybe next semester, put a couple of those recyclable bags in your vehicle, in your trunk, in your car, motorcycle, whatever you do, however you get to the store, even if it's by foot, and take those and opt not to get the plastic bags. Not only are they a nuisance at landfills because they act as sails. When the wind picks them up, they're the number one windblown trash that they're required to pick up by their permit. But it is also a very disturbing waste stream that is so disturbing that places are beginning to ban them. And we'll look at those in just a minute. So when you see plastic bags like this one, you can just go, I've seen a lot of that. Well, imagine that all over the world. And this is a common problem. Plastic bags are cheap, and that's why they're made that way. And plastics are numbered. If you didn't know that, they're numbered by the type of plastic that they are and if they can be recycled. Most plastic bags are not recyclable, and then they break into small, tiny little pieces that are ingested by animals. So you're looking at some of the trash and that you'll see in various coral reefs around the world. So here's a couple of plastic bag bans. When you think of places in Texas that currently have them, South Padre Island's kind of a no-brainer because they're home to some endangered turtles and other wildlife, like the Kemp's Ridley sea turtle. Brownsville, of all places, has banned these, and Austin. So if you've been in the city limits of Austin any time recently in the last couple of years, you'll know that you have to pay for a bag. So all of your groceries are given to you just as is, and either you bring your bags or you pay for the bags once you're there. Austin's goal is to be carbon neutral by 2040. If you didn't know this, MCC's plan is to be carbon neutral and waste improved by 2050. There are numerous large cities around the United States who've already banned out plastic bags because they're the number one waste stream, and then second to that would be plastic bottles. So the second one of the R's that we're going to look at today is reduce. And there's a lot of ways you can do this. When you think about energy, there's a few things I would suggest to you. Energy does not come free unless you use renewable energy. And really, in all fairness, wind energy and solar energy are the cheapest routes to go. But most of us don't do 100% of our energy that way. We use some form of fossil fuel consumption, whether you knew that or not. And all fossil fuels are geologically based, whether it's coal, it's natural gas, or it's coal, natural gas, and then of course hydrocarbons. So regardless of which choice that you're using of fossil fuels, probably a sum of your utilization of energy comes from that. So what can you do to reduce? Change your light bulbs to long-lasting bulbs. They really do make a difference. Consider changing your thermostat and not making it so hot or cold in your house. And even better yet, consider getting one of the new iThermostats that actually allow you to control your thermostat with your phones. And even your energy company can shut it off during certain parts of the day where there's peak usage from commercial and industry, and that helps reduce your bill. Consider doing it the old-fashioned way, where you dry and your clothes and your materials outside if you have a clothesline. If you don't, do the same premise indoors. You don't have to dry everything. If you are going to dry, then I would consider doing it with an energy-efficient appliance and consider getting an Energy Star rated appliance. You'll really appreciate the payback over time. Protect your energy investments and learn how to find a way to reduce. For example, when you are washing your clothes, wash on the cool or warm cycle instead of the hot cycle unless it's absolutely necessary. You'll save energy. When you're looking at saving water and reducing water, run your clothes washer when it's full, not half full. Run your dishwasher at the same premise. Consider putting tools to not flush your toilet with a full flush, or even change out your toilets to a low flow flush. Consider using rinse water for your vegetables and fruits. All instead of running water, put it in a bowl and actually rinse. These seem like no-brainer ideas, But probably the one that you can make the most difference of is getting a low flow shower head. Trust me, I have them and you still get very clean. Matter of fact, I prefer it over my high flow. It gives really great water usage, but you're not using as much water. So you get lots of water when you're using it. It's just kind of taking it by about 50% less concentration. So give that a shot. Consider saving water for future use, like through rain harvesting and rain collection, where you can water the yard, you can water your pets and so forth with them. That is a very positive thing to do. Consider using xeriscaping, which is a form of using natural and native vegetation that requires very little water, if any, to keep alive. When it comes to paper, this is something that is important to think about. I would say that save your paper for other usage. I'm always amazed at how many students will turn in papers double-sided in my face-to-face classes, that they will quit taking the newspaper and maybe subscribe online, and kind of moving that direction. Newspapers have really taken a nosedive in the concentration of our waste stream nationwide, even worldwide. But one thing you can do that so many people should do on an annual basis, I'm sure you get those obnoxious calls on your phones that you're on the do not call list, but you have to renew it every year. That's kind of how you national do not mail list. Do a search on the internet for that and sign up for that so you don't get a bunch of wasted junk mail. That is such a waste of paper, energy to produce it, and then to recycle that paper takes more energy and more process. What I'm wanting you to see is it's linked. Our environment to our earth is definitely important, and we want to save our energy and our resources as much as possible. When you can, save stuff that has a second life or a different use. For example, if you have a reusable cup, do that instead of styrofoam. If you have the grocery bags that are the cloth bags, the recycle bags, use those. You can buy these little fruit and vegetable bags like this, or the mesh bags that you can put your sandwiches in, reusable tubs, and even glass straws. A lot of people say, why would you want a glass straw? Well, you'd be surprised on how much one person who generates a soft drink every time they get one, let's say one a day, and they're getting a straw to go with that, that can really add up. But I will tell you, if you use a glass straw, you need to make sure you wash it for bacterial purposes. Other things that you could do: renewable batteries, rechargeable batteries. Consider doing the types of mops that have the reusable cloths. Consider any way you can to use your stuff over and over again. All right, one thing you can do for reusing, and I'll really focus in on this, if you haven't done yard sales and estate sales, give it a shot, because sometimes you'll find the most incredible stuff. It's a form of reuse. You're reusing something that has a second life and it's not being thrown in the trash. Retail prices can get very expensive, so if you've not done something like a consignment shop and look for clothes, or consigned your clothes there, it's a way to get some income. That's another way to reuse material. If you have things, let's say old bicycles, old chairs, things of that nature that you want to recycle, don't put in the trash, consider going to freecycle.org and listing it. It's kind of like a Craigslist for free. And of course, Craigslist is an example of how you can sell things, but FreeCycle is a free exchange of that material. We do that at MCC on our Shred Day and Recycle Day. Whatever you can do, find ways to reuse your stuff. And I want to say, if you haven't considered interesting and innovative ways to use things, look at some of the ideas, and you can get these at crafts and art shows, where you can just look and see how people have utilized old stuff and given it a second life that makes sense. So I've always been interested to see how people can take things and reuse them. For example, for a gal, this can be a real struggle when you can't find your hoops or your earrings that match, and that's just a really great way and cheap way to store them. All right, what can you recycle? I want to briefly talk about this because waste is important. This shot came from one of our shred days, and every shred day we have at MCC, we get stuff that doesn't belong there. So I want to kind of do a little quick education. on the different major recyclables for you. On paper, newspapers, magazines, junk mail, phone books, cardboard, printed paper are all recyclable. But here's what's not, and it may surprise you. Coated paper. So is it kind of like a thick gloss? Carbon paper, where it's multi-pages of paper, so it writes through. So manifest, sometimes your thermal paper like receipts are that way. Stickers that you might use, laminated paper, and dirty, what I would call soiled paper. So if it gets wet paper, food wrappers, things of that nature, they don't need to be recycled and they'll get sorted out on the recycling line. When it comes to aluminum, do the crunch test to make sure there's no kind of coating on it. So soda cans, beer cans, the lids, foil that's non-contaminated can be accepted, but not very many. And this is the quiz question this week. Not many recycling places take foil, just as an FYI. Scrap metal parts. So anything that's aluminum or metal can be recycled. Just make sure it's not contaminated. Anything that's a metal coated with a plastic film is not recyclable. And about that aluminum foil, I'll tell you nowhere in Waco takes it. When you think about recycling glass, everybody thinks all kinds of glass are recyclable. Well, the truth is, glass can be recycled, but there may not be a recycle vendor within a reasonable expectation that's profitable for, or even cost efficient for somebody or a city or so forth to recycle. So beer and wine are the two number one production of glass, and then your food products that come in glass and glass sheets. But I'm going to tell you, window glass, different ballgame. The only place in Waco that recycles window glass is the Waco Habitat for Humanity's Restore. Light bulbs, you can't do that. Recycling them, there's hazardous components in those, so don't put those for recycling. And then, of course, mirrors are not either. There's only a handful of places that can take mirrors. When it comes to plastic, most everything can be recycled. Soda and drink bottles are recyclable. Plastic film that comes like on the outside of packages. Let's say you buy a 24 pack of water bottles, and that plastic film actually has value to it. Anything like a vitamin bottle, so forth, detergent bottles, even I'm going to say your prescription bottles are recyclable, but make sure your name's off of them and your prescription number. Always take personal information off of anything you recycle, whether it be junk mail, prescriptions, and so forth. Some places don't take bottled caps, but most places do. And I would tell you in Waco, that's not a problem when it goes to whether you're putting it in the curbside or you're recycling it here at MCC or wherever it is, it's likely going to Sunbright. These are the different types of plastics, and I'm going to just take a minute to tell you there's 1 through 7, and peat is probably the most common. That's number 1. That's like things like your bottled water and sodas and so forth. Your milk jugs are number 2, so you can read about each one in juice materials, things that hold juice bottles. PVC are things that you might be using for shampoo, cooking oil, and salad dressing. When you get to 4s, LDPEs, these are usually food storage containers, sometimes dairy. When your newspaper, if you take that, and my mom takes a newspaper and I have to take the plastic film off for her, that's an LPDD. And then you will see polypropylene, which is PP, and those are things like your prescription bottles and a handful of other more durable products. Polystyrene, PS, is a very common one that's not recycled as often. And mostly the most common one for that is, unbelievably, styrofoam. Styrofoam can be recycled, but isn't recyclable in Waco at this time simply because we don't have a vendor anywhere nearby that would make it cost efficient and effective to recycle that. What I would like you to know is that you need to come over here and spend some time looking at which each of the 1 through 7 gets turned into, because recycling doesn't stop with recycling. In order to meet the 4 R's, you have to close the loop and buy recycled products. So that brings me to the last of the new R's. Refuse. Refuse to take freebies if you're not going to use them, and disposable stuff if you're not going to use them. Repair things that can be fixed. I'm married to a fixer-upper kind of guy, and he can take something that's broken and fix it up. In the past, I just would have said, okay, I'm going to get rid of this, and now he always tries to fix it first. The rebuy, though, out of the remaining three, I think is so important, because if you're not buying recycled products, you're never closing the loop on recycled materials. So, how does all of this link to our course? You've learned about the environment in terms of geology and landscapes, rocks, minerals, fossils. You moved into looking at the night sky and our astronomy and our world out there in outer space. We've looked at oceanography, and then we focused in on meteorology and climate. The environment homes in on all of that, and protecting the resources that we have is critically important. I would ask you to really think about, where are your waste streams? Meaning, what do you generate the most waste of? And actually look at that for a week. If you've not considered taking environmental science, several of us teach it. It's a great course. Now that you completed Earth Science 1, eventually there'll be an Earth Science 2 coming out. I'm working on it now. And I'll tell you, if you haven't considered it, maybe take physical geology. It's a wonderful course. I hope to see you in another online course or face-to-face class. I wanted to tell you what a privilege it is to have served you this semester. You've been an enjoyable class, and I hope that you have a great rest of this semester and break. Thanks. Bye.